All right, welcome back to the channel. So Canelo Alvarez disagrees that Errol Spence Jr. is the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world. He says that it's him, and in fact, he seems like he says that Terrence Crawford and Gervonta Davis are also better. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. So this particular conversation is what you call subjective, right? It is something that is your opinion, and different people have different factors that come into play when they, when they share their opinion, right? Something can look great to one person and it doesn't look very good to somebody else. It's just what it is. It's up to people's, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So when Canelo Alvarez says that he believes that he is the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world and that it is not Terrence Crawford, it is not Errol Spence Jr., it is not whoever else, that is his opinion. And quite honestly, it is an opinion that can be backed up with sound logic. So much so that I had Canelo Alvarez at a time as my #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world. I thought that and matter of fact, I'll tell you exactly when it was that I agreed with Canelo Alvarez. After the retirement of Andre Ward and right around the time of his first fight with Gennady Golovkin. After the first fight with Gennady Golovkin, which I thought he won, and around that time Andre Ward said he was no longer going to fight, I believed, it was my belief that Canelo Alvarez was the best pound-for-pound fighter in the world. But then something changed, and it was called a positive test for Clenbuterol. And that was in the lead up to the second Gennady Golovkin fight. That fight, a circumstance took place where he could not fight, and the fight he had to wait. He got a little slap on the wrist, but there it is. When somebody tests positive for performance-enhancing drugs, in my book, you are no longer in the conversation. So despite the fact that Canelo has a lot of skills, he has good wins on his resume, he is definitely a big money guy in the division. No, man, I can't do it for you, and I can't do it for you for not just, let me put it this way, 2 reasons, and it's called double D's, and it ain't got nothing to do with no sizes, of female, clothing. Double D's is ducking, drugging, and ducking. Because of drugging and ducking, Canelo Alvarez cannot be considered #1 pound-for-pound. I've already talked about the Clenbuterol. The second is the fact that he has a franchise championship, and he has that specifically to allow him to duck fighters like Jermall Charlo. And when you are openly and actively ducking people, when you're openly and actively getting stripped of, when you're getting stripped by the IBF for not fighting Sergey Derevyanchenko, look, man, what do you want to say? That's a lot of ducking. That's a lot of avoiding. And despite the fact that Canelo Alvarez says that he doesn't have anything to prove, yeah, that's what very, very wealthy people typically say. I've got nothing else to prove. What do I care what you think? I got that. You're wealthy. That's how you think. However, like I said, it's subjective, and not everybody's going to have to go with you, man. Now, he says that people that really have good understanding of boxing know that he's #1. Okay, it maybe some of these people don't consider that, having franchise championships and not fighting the guys in your own weight division, guys that are your own contemporaries. If you don't consider that, how about you just consider the last, 6 fights and look at what Errol Spence Jr. has done in the last 6 fights and what Canelo Alvarez has done in the last 6 fights. Canelo Alvarez fought the week he moved up to 175 pounds and fought Sergey Kovalev. Okay, whoop-de-doo. He had been knocked out 2 times. He was alcoholic. He's slow. He wasn't the best guy at 175 pounds. He was a shell of himself, and Canelo Alvarez went up there and won a fight. Okay, great. That is still not dominating your division, and I don't think highly of that fight. Nobody asked for that fight. That was one of those DAZN, like, let's figure out what kind of imaginary record we can break by making this fight. Oh, Canelo's got the most championships in, what was his fourth division or something like that at the same time, but they tried to pawn off the WBA. They tried to pawn off the WBA regular championship that he got off Rocky Fielding, right? Rocky Fielding wasn't the best 168-pounder. He ain't even a real 168-pounder. So that's Canelo. That's Rocky Fielding. Now, you have a decent win or a good win in Daniel Jacobs. You got a good win with Gennady Golovkin. Very solid wins. But what am I supposed to think about guys like Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. and Lee, you know what I mean? So that's who I do believe are his last 6 fights. And when you compare that to guys that like Errol Spence, who actually fight their mandatory, and somebody says, hey, you got to fight this guy. He says, okay, I'll fight him. When there's a unified champion, he looks for the fight with the unified champion, and that being Sean Porter. Look, Canelo Alvarez is a great fighter, and I do believe, despite the fact that he's tested positive for performance-enhancing drugs in the past, that there is a road forward to him where it could be reasonable to say that this guy is a pound-for-pound fighter, right? And I think it should happen in a series of if you look at a guy and you look at his last 6 fights, right? 6 fights is 3 years. If you've not done significant stuff in your last 6 fights, how do we know that you really are the person that you were 6 fights ago? Because 3 years is a long time in boxing, man. It's a very long time. It's a guy's entire career. So if he wants to move forward, or like he said, he doesn't care, in my opinion, in order for him to become a pound-for-pound number one guy, number one, fighting at 160 pounds and clearing out a division like beating Demetrius Andrade and beating Jermall Charlo and becoming an undisputed champion at 160, which is really one of the deepest divisions in boxing, that could establish him in that way, in my opinion, right? But look, the fact that he's not fighting these guys tell you something. He's fighting at 168. 168 is not anywhere as near as deep as 160 is. In 160, for the other champions, you have Jermall Charlo, you have Gennady Golovkin, and you have Demetrius Andrade. Demetrius Andrade, who not a lot of people talk about because of things that are, in large part Demetrius Andrade's own causing, but yet and still, that ain't no walk in the park. A win over him would in my eyes, would definitely be like, okay, make me think, all right, man, he's down at 160 pounds. He ain't popped dirty in a long time. Maybe it was just the beef. I ain't gonna really think that, honestly, but I like Canelo, so I want to get a dude a break. You know what I mean? And if he doesn't get caught and, everything else is equal, at least like I said, you can get rid of the ducking and you could actually be fighting the best competition. But that's not what Canelo's doing right now. That might have been the scenario, in large part because of his relationship with DAZN and the fights that they wanted him to take. I can't speak on that. But if he he's fighting Liam Smith. This particular Callum Smith fight, Canelo Alvarez said that Callum Smith is the best guy at 168 pounds. That's what Canelo Alvarez said. If that's true and Canelo Alvarez is right, that tells you a lot about 168 pounds because Callum Smith is garbage, okay? And more than likely, 95% chance he's getting knocked out by Canelo Alvarez because he's too slow, he's too straight up and down. He's going to go. It's just not a good weight division. And Canelo did not fight 175-pounder named Arthur Beterbiev, who, man, come on, Canelo may not fight again if he fights that guy. He's a 160-pounder. Fight the 160-pounders. If you beat Jermall, if you beat Demetrius Andrade, then you can definitely say, without anybody having a question, that you're the number one pound-for-pound guy in the world. But the way you're going, you're the number one money guy in the world for the time being. But keep your eye on Errol Spence Jr. Anyway, it is what it is. You let me know what you think in the comments section. And with that, hey, make sure you follow me on Instagram. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at Phenom Boxing. And with that, I'm out. Peace.